loud. Ooh, loud. Loud, loud, loud. Okay. So our session today is lessons learned from 16th century counterpoint, and come on over, Eric, so that Sam and Nathan just stay here.
Okay.
So a couple years back, how many? Three or four, Eric asked me what would be a really good thing for him to study, maybe kind of on his own, to get better at writing music. And I said, well, the thing that affected me the most was 16th century counterpoint, which is this lovely red book by Knut Jeppesen, who worked for the, he was professor of music at the University of Aarhus in Denmark. Aarhus is a really cool town, let me say. Yeah, anyway, he wrote this book in 1931 in the original Danish, translated into German in 35, and then into English in 1939. And this book was the subject, it's not very long, is it? 302 pages, including the index at the back, or the, what do you want to call it? The references, right. Index. It was the subject of a year-long class, graduate level class, an hour a day, 3 days a week. So that's 90 hours of class was this book. And I told my pal here, Eric, to do it. And I think at first maybe he went, no. And then he got the book. Oh yeah. And told him.
So I was pretty ready for something like this. It's sort of like a manual for, and actually, you know what it uses? There's some history at the beginning. It talks about like where, or like how counterpoint was developed, or at least the counterpoint we've received here. And who here has been taking classes with Jordan on species counterpoint? So this goes through something very similar to that. It goes through the species. So it starts off with
first species.
Yes, exactly. First species with two-part counterpoint. And it gives you the rules for them and all that. And then you go through and you, does this look familiar, Caleb? Yes. And then you add parts, and then you go, so I don't know, I probably spent a week doing that, and then
just doing that.
And
you write only whole notes, and they're all consonant, every one of them. And what are the consonant intervals? Somebody tell me.
Octaves and fifths.
Octaves, fifths. Those are the perfect. Thirds are the imperfect, and sixths. And what's the one that surprisingly is not consonant? The fourth. Yeah. So when you do that first species, it all has to be consonant. And it's, you probably think, oh, well, what difference would it make? Here, I should share screen and we'll see if we have sound, right? Over our speaker here.
Right.
Because we could hear this earlier. It's working. Okay, so if I want to write a consonant melody that goes with this, I could just say, oh, I'll write all thirds. No, that would be boring, because what 16th century counterpoint teaches you is how to balance things. So when you leap up, even a little bitty leap like this, you want to have the other voice go the other direction.
Yeah.
So that's rule number 1 in Sarah's compositional rule book, which is contrary motion is good. Got it? Rule number 1. That's very good. Rule number 2 you will encounter on day 4 of this camp. So then eventually you get to have first passing tones, which are dissonances on a weak beat, because what it's teaching you is how to control dissonance. Yes. Makes sense?
Yeah.
And we'll get back to how you can apply this to your own writing. So we have balance between rising and falling. When you're writing a melodic line, if you skip up a ways, then you step back. Like somewhere doesn't go over the rain, does it? It comes down and it fills it in. And there's apparently a really cool analysis of that melody online. Kim Sherman told me this, so you may want to go look for that. But when you have a large skip up, even if it's there's a place for us, so you go down. If you leap down, you come back the other direction. So there's this change of direction after leaps. And then if you're going to do a big leap, like if I wanted to do one here, I could have maybe an F here. I could jump up to C here, not D, C, because the other voice steps down. So I can do a leap up, but then I have to come down, which works because this is a sixth and this is a sixth. You can do parallel imperfect consonances, these kind of things. Okay.
And it's okay to go in thirds and sixths parallel for
A little
while, but if you have them going for too long, then you don't really have a distinct melody. You just have a melody with a harmony that follows it.
Yeah.
So that's a part of the balance too.
Yeah. Is sometimes one part, you notice the highest note in the given melody, it's called a cantus firmus in Latin, but it's the given melody, that's what it means. Its highest note is here, but I may want the other part to have the highest note against this because this one goes down from G to F, you know? So it could be that I go to, I don't want to go to C there, do I? Because that would be approaching a fifth in similar motion. We don't want to do that. Well, there's all sorts of rules. But you learn how to control stuff when you do 16th century counterpoint. And you are learning that, aren't you, with Jordan? But know that you could easily spend 90 hours on it. But once you have spent those 90 hours, is that about how many you think we spent? Well, that was 90 hours of class time. Then there was the homework
Yeah,
time.
right.
So more
Exactly.
like over 200 hours on it. When you get to that point, you are fluent in the way these things work. And so part of it is about balancing things. Part of it is about control. You control dissonance, you control motion, both directionality, and eventually when you get to free counterpoint, somebody has fast notes. Well, when one person has fast notes, what does the other person do, or the other people do? They have slow supportive notes, but then the person who had the fast notes might get a long note, and then someone else gets to take the spotlight by having faster notes. Could this apply to what you are writing? Yes, I would hope.
It applies to everything.
It applies to everything.
Everything.
Everything. Balance, control, singability, which is also playability. One of the things they teach you if you're writing counterpoint is don't write with a greater than range than a tenth or so, because these were meant to be sung. Palestrina. You ever heard of Palestrina? This is Palestrina's practice codified after he wrote. And the first person who tried to codify it with some success was Fuchs in 1725, right? I got that? We wrote it down. Yes. And then this guy came 200 years later and did a better job of it than Fuchs did. But there were 200 more years to think about how 16th century counterpoint weren't there. You can get this for a Kindle, by the way, if you want to go through it on your own. It totally works. So don't write with too wide a range. Does this apply even when you're writing for the French horn, the clarinet? Some instruments more than others. You have to think about the range thing. Yeah. And voices, are they loudest when they're in the high part of their range, the middle part, or the low part? The The high part, does that correspond with wind instruments? String instruments? Violin? Not necessarily, right? Because you can play very softly high. It's more piercing as you get higher. Yeah. I should see if anybody who's online has questions because I can't see everybody. So far, so good. Here's my rule number. I think it's actually rule number 3. I think I got the order wrong. If you can't sing what you've written, don't expect anyone to play it. And how many of you wrote things for the percussion trio to play? Tim and William. Nathan, did you write something for them? No. Sam, did you?
No.
No. Yeah. Well, one of the things that Randall put in the prompt was, do not give them rhythms you can't do. Don't expect the musicians are gods that can do anything a computer can do. Don't do that. And if you write rhythms in such a way you can't figure out how to do them, that's no good either. Okay. We don't want that. And then the final thing you really get from 16th century counterpoint is an ability to think about the beauty of a melodic line. Because this is sung counterpoint. It has to be beautiful. The counterpoint in Bach, is that meant to be sung? Bach wrote instrumental counterpoint, right? It's a very different thing than this. So one of the ways that that beauty happens is you have, for example, in this canvas, a single highest note. How many highest mountains are there in the world? 2? No, because one of them is always higher than the other one. It depends on how you measure them, which one is the highest mountain, right? If you measure from the center of the earth or from altitude, they're different. I think Everest is the altitude one. But one highest point is very natural and very beautiful. And just because one voice is hitting its high point, that doesn't mean everybody else is. They can have their high points at their own time. Make sense so far?
Sounds like balance.
Sounds like balance. It's beauty and it's balance. And then talk about what you learned.
Oh yeah. So, so on the beauty front, the way that these 16th century melodies flow, they kind of have like a natural arc to them. And it sort of is like, I guess we're sort of following what happens in the natural world. You don't have like a particular angular shape that you're outlining, which, you know, some 18th century music sounds like it's outlining a chord, perhaps. You're arpeggiating a chord. These are melodies that just kind of flow from one note to the other, not aimlessly. It's a beautiful melody, but it's sort of like it's a natural path that it just seems to kind of be freely following, versus it must stick to the strict harmonic sense.
Harmonic and metrical.
Oh yeah, sure.
Metrical sense. The whole idea of repeating lengths of downbeats or inches of music that are all the same, and you know that it's the same thing because you're accenting every downbeat. That is not the thing here. And what does that resemble that's very natural? Do I speak in meter? No, so it's more like the spoken word. And if you try to transcribe spoken word into, it's not poetry, just somebody's talking and you transcribe it into music, you have to change meter every single measure, which means it's not really meter.
Mm-hmm.
You're just measuring the relative length of different notes. So that's a very natural thing, more natural than this adherence to repeating downbeats that happen every inch of music. That's why we call them measures. And it's a notion that is peculiar to Western music. That was what one of my music history professors said. I liked that word.
Yeah.
That meter, it's peculiar to Western music, and really started laying hold of music in the Baroque, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so. Other thing about so this is I'll read the sentence and then we'll talk about it. Vertical sonorities, aka chords, are the natural outcome of beautiful melodies in 16th century counterpoint. So
Layered on top of each other.
yes, exactly. So you have, like here we have our cantus firmus here. Then we'll create a contrapuntal melody that goes over the top of it, and we're following rules and we're creating a beautiful melody at the same time, and we'll sort of discover the harmonies that are being created. We're not necessarily thinking like, okay, we're going to go from the 1 to the 5 7 to the to the 4 chord, and then we're going to resolve. You are sort of just creating beautiful melodies, following the rules, and you discover chordal combinations that you're like, I wouldn't have thought of that, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, because 16th century counterpoint was not tonal. It was the height of modal music. Tonality was born somewhere around 1600, the beginning of the Baroque era, 1600. There were a bunch of things that happened in 1600 that changed the course of everything. They decided that in 16th century counterpoint, if you could sing a line, you could do it. If you could play it on your instrument, you could do it. They didn't specify who had to be doing what in a piece of counterpoint. It was not specific at all, and it was not tonal. And then you get the Baroque era, and they start saying, this piece is for instruments. This piece is to be sung. What's the word that means it's supposed to be played by instruments? Sonata. And what's the one if it's supposed to be sung? Cantata. Yes, those were new terms in the Baroque. They did not exist before that. And tonality started being born. And what's really funny is when they first figured out that tonic dominant relationship, there were pieces that only did that over and over again. It's horrific to us now. But to them, it was like, wow, listen to this.
It's like the new thing.
The new thing was dominant leads to tonic, right? That was not the case at this time. So it's not harmonically driven. It's not chordally driven. It is all about beauty of individual melodic lines that are layered on top of each other using a whole book full of rules. Because that's what this really is. It's a book of rules.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the going is slow.
Rules that weren't necessarily rules at the time.
Right? Because Palestrina didn't write this book. He wrote the music. The theory came after the practice. Does that make sense? Yeah. And just like 18th century theory came after the practice. And that's when you talk about music theory, it's the theory of the music of 18th century Europe. It's not the theory of Balkan music. It's not the theory of Javanese music. It's not the theory of Chinese music, different cultures. It's 18th century European music. So whenever you see music theory, you can just put in there instead, music of 18th century Europe. I know the rules of music of 18th century Europe. I know them. You probably know quite a few of them too. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Makes sense to you. That's good. Now, is it time? Do you have questions? Those of you who are doing this with Jordan, did this give you a bigger picture? Or did she already say all these things? I'm curious.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, and it's distilled. That's what we wanted to do, was distill it down to the concepts. So what are the major concepts? I want you to be able to say these to people. I want to study 16th century counterpoint because it teaches me
Balance,
balance. It teaches me,
control,
it teaches me,
singability, playability,
yes, and most importantly, it teaches
beauty,
beauty,
beauty above all.
beauty above all.
Yes.
Yeah. And so if you write something and it's not beautiful, it's not 16th century counterpoint, let me tell you. And I've had students that have gone through and they've gone, okay, so this is F. So my consonant notes with F are A and C and D and F. And then they'll write all those above it. And then they'll just pick one. And then they'll go, my consonant notes with E are. And that way doesn't work so well.
Yeah. It's curious though that you started here from the end.
I always start at the end. Because in 16th century counterpoint, you either expand from a sixth to an octave, or see if I do it down below, I'm gonna do, yeah, it could be that note, right? Could be an octave. It wants to be up here. And then I have to mute the upper part, because when you do these exercises, the one you write below does not go with the one you write above.
Oh yes, the first part of the book is two-part counterpoint, and then eventually.
That's the end of first species, yes.
So third or 10th into unison or octave and
Mhm.
below.
Yep, and sixth to an octave. If it goes down, one of the voices will do sixth to the octave. If it goes up, then the other one will do it.
Right.
But you have to follow rule number 1 when you're at the cadence. What's the first rule of Sarah's rules? Yes, contrary motion is good. It's not the only motion, but it's good. And what's my rule number 3?
Can you read my handwriting?
Yes, if you can't
Oh.
sing what you
I
have written.
forgot an important word here.
Yes, don't expect anyone else to be able to do it.
If you sing what you've written, don't expect anyone else. No, that's not.
If you can sing it, then you know it works. And so many instruments are predicated on trying to imitate the human voice. I don't know if you knew that. So when they write cantabile for piano, piano is what kind of instrument? Percussion, and we're supposed to try to make it sound singing. How do you do that? Do you know? It's imagination. It's totally the imagination. And you can make the piano sound like different instruments. Did you notice? Because I once accompanied a dear friend of mine playing Samuel Barber's Knoxville Summer of whatever that year was, 19 something. And it's an orchestral piece, and I was playing the piano reduction, and I had listened to the orchestral piece, and I'd written in, these are horns, and these are clarinets, and these are cellos. And so as I was playing it, I was hearing those instruments in my head. And you have to be able to do this to work with music notation software, because it never does anything quite right, does it? And afterwards, someone in the audience came up to me and said, I heard the different instruments when you were playing. That was the best compliment I've ever gotten. Seriously, because they heard what I was doing. And you can do it with imagination. Okay, so violins are a singing instrument because they can crescendo on a note. Sadly, we can't on the piano, can we, William? No. We can diminuendo really well. It happens no matter what.
It's true.
And guitar is, you can't crescendo on a note, can you?
No, you can tremolo, but that you can
Yeah.
do it on a piano as well.
And that's what they did in the Baroque when they wanted to imitate singing. They would put trills on to elongate notes. They put ornaments on to accent notes because they didn't get You couldn't make the sound different any other way on a harpsichord. Because that was really well, it's plucked. But all they were doing was laying out a lute so you could play it more easily, because the lute, if you've ever seen one, oh my, they have more strings. Some of them have a whole bunch of strings.
Yeah.
And
Complex.
it was complicated, and your average person couldn't play them, right? So they wanted to make it so the average person could play something that sounded sort of like a lute. So they wanted the strings plucked. But anyway, that's another discussion. Now, it is time for canon, isn't it? Are we in the canon zone? Yes, we have 10 minutes.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. How many of you have been in on the canon at all yet? Everybody, yay! So you know how this goes, and I think it'll keep playing.
We need to add Subway.
We need to add something. Yes. Now first,
Subway.
Subway. Kevin went to Subway. Okay, so we need Kevin went to Subway with or without permission. Oh no, he didn't know he wasn't supposed to leave campus without being accompanied by an adult. You all knew that, right? Maybe it was one of the rules, Randall's rule number 1, that didn't get done. Okay, so, and then we look at this. Okay, we got C and we got C, but we want, Kevin, I need to see everybody. There, I can see everybody, even though I'm covering up part of, maybe if I make it bigger. There, I can see everybody. I'm gonna move this over here so you can all see it. Okay, look good. And you can see behind me. I'll let you know more of my rules later. Do we just want to say Kevin went to Subway? Would that be enough? Something about during the salon. During the salon, he missed the salon? Oh no. Now, what we're going to do with the rhythm here is figure out a way to contrast the rhythm that we have. We're going to apply some of those rules we just talked about in counterpoint, right? We might think about what sounds good with C for this singer to sing next. Find us on Zoom. Now, Kevin going to Subway, is that a bad thing or a good thing? If you're not Kevin, it's bad. So what note would work that would make it minor and not major? A in the key, right? And if we hear that, because if we went to E, it would be very happy. You hear that? But we may like that. What did you like, the E or the A? How many vote for the E? Including online, Nathan and Sam. You like the E, Nathan? Nathan likes the E. What about you, William? Did you like the A? Either way. Either way. Caleb? A. Iggy? A. Eric? A. Okay, Tim, A. Okay, we're going to A, sorry. But we can then go down to E, can't we? Might be nice because we have C and G, although we could stay on A and then it's an A minor 7th chord. And here we have 2 eighth notes. We have a quarter note. What would be a different rhythm? Eighth quarter, eighth is sort of like Randall, your, right? It's just not holding the middle note.
Two dotted.
We could do dotted quarter eighth, we could do dotted eighth, 16th. Kevin went to Subway, right? You like that? So, oops. Right here. Okay. And we have Kevin went, Kevin. Now we don't have to stay on the A. Kevin, go down to G. Kevin went to, do you like that? Can we get to a D next, or do we want a C and make it a diminished chord? Let's listen to this first, though. It works, doesn't it? Let's slow it down, though, because we want to hear this. Tempo. Come on. I know we're going to sing this faster than this. Okay, but 80's kind of slow. It works even at that, doesn't it? It's sometimes easier to hear them if we do it on the piano. So we need lyrics. Control L. Kevin went to.
Can we make it B major chord on the second measure?
Can we make it a B major chord?
D.
B major. Yes, we could. Let's listen to it. And can we sing it? Kevin went to sub. Da, 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 da. That's not hard, is it? Kevin went to, maybe it'd be easier if we made this note an F. Kevin went to sub. What do you think? But which is easier to sing? Because we're going to sing it fast. Kevin went to sub. Kevin went to. Actually, it's pretty easy with the D, isn't it? And then we have fast notes here. Randall. So we don't want 16th notes. Kevin went to Subway or Subway. Subway. Oh, no, we want to see. Kevin went to Subway. And then we could do, oh, you know what we can do? We could do these notes. We could do thirds, couldn't we? And we could come back. Yes, and that's what this would be. Subway during the salon. It doesn't have to be this, but listen. What do you think? Do you want? Let's try it. Ooh, that's nice. Do you like the next part? Because it gets kind of high instantly. It could be as we could move this down. So we're a third below instead of a third above. Oh, and then this would be an E, right? Or should we come back to, should we stay on D? During the salon. We do have a B up here, but that might be good. Do you like that? Okay. Subway during the, I think I did the hyphen in the wrong place, but. That good? Do you want to try the D? It is a doubled note, isn't it? No, it's not. That better? And then if we're gonna do this in that part, we should do it on all of them, shouldn't we? What do you think, Nathan? Sam? Sam is online. He doesn't want us to see his nice face. Should we do it up to tempo now? I can just make this 120. Oh, and I have to copy our new part. And what do I do with our new part? Now, eventually, what do we have to do? We don't have to do it yet because we're only on day 2. We're only on our 3rd canon session. But what do we have to do eventually? We have to figure out a line that will fit with this so we can wrap around, right? Because it's going to be around eventually. Now listen to all of it. So far, so good. And I'm going to save. And then I should probably upload this to which folder, Randall?
I think on your computer, composers music, CI22 composers music, in the drive.
Yeah.
Make a folder if you want to, or you can put it in the drive, in that big folder.
Okay, I'm gonna go to shared with me.
Type in under
Directory.
composers music.
Yeah, I'm gonna move this out of the way. Sorry. Generate finding post tutorial drive. Can I just make a new? Oh, we want to be in the whole Composers Institute. That's this one, right?
Yep.
And
You
then
search for composers folder, composers music.
because I'm not, this is all I'm seeing. Oh, MPT readings and Randall's presentations. I'm gonna make a new folder
That's what I, yeah, that'd be good.
and we'll call it Canon.
I believe CI.22.canon.
CI.22.canon.
Yep.
Create. And then we go there and we go here. And I can stop the share now, I think. And I can stop the recording. I think that also would be good.